Darius Washington was 41 years old, a self-made architect who had spent 12 years building two things with everything he had: his firm and his marriage. On the evening of his 12th anniversary, he left his office early, intending to arrange flowers at the restaurant table the way he had done every year. When his car was blocked in the parking garage, he climbed into the back seat to wait. He never told Angela. She had no reason to check. In 12 years, she had never once considered that the man she had quietly written off might be sitting in the dark behind her. So when Angela slid into that driver's seat and brought her lover into the front of Darius's own car on their anniversary night, an hour before their dinner reservation, she did it without a single moment of hesitation. What Darius saw and heard in that back seat, completely still, didn't just confirm the affair. It revealed a plan she had been building for 18 months, using his money, his trust, and his name, that she believed he would never be smart enough to find. She was wrong about everything. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The last drawing Darius Washington touched that Friday was a load-bearing wall. Most people would have looked at the blueprint and seen a line. Darius saw a decision, the kind of decision that holds everything else up or lets it all come down. He studied it for a long moment, made one small correction in pencil, and then set the drafting pencil down with the same care he used to pick it up. 4:47 p.m. He rolled the blueprints, capped them, and slid them into the flat file drawer with a soft click. Around him, the office carried its usual Friday hum: keyboards, low voices, the distant sound of the elevator opening and closing. His team moved well without him watching. That was by design. He had built this place the same way he built everything: patiently, deliberately, with the right people load-bearing and the wrong ones quietly redirected before they could do damage. "You're leaving early!" His project manager, Denise, looked up from her monitor with something between surprise and approval. 12 years, Darius said, pulling his jacket from the coat rack behind the door. Denise smiled. "Tell Angela happy anniversary." "I will." He meant it. He meant everything he said, which was why he said very little. The text took him 30 seconds to compose, standing at the elevator. "Heading out now. See you at Maison Elara at 7:30. Reservations are set." Angela's reply came before the elevator reached the lobby. "Perfect. I'll be there. Love you." A small red heart at the end of it. He read it once, slid the phone into his breast pocket, and stepped out into the late afternoon light. His charcoal gray Audi waiting 2 levels down in the parking garage where it always was. He was going to the restaurant early. He did it every year. Arrived ahead of Angela. Spoke quietly with whoever was managing the floor. Arranged the flowers himself so they were exactly right before she walked in. It was not a grand gesture. It was a private one. The kind of thing you do for someone not because they will notice, but because they deserve it. He had been doing it for 12 years. The parking garage was dim and cool after the warmth of the street. His footsteps were steady on the concrete. He turned the corner toward his row and stopped. A delivery truck, wide white engine still running, sat parked at a diagonal that blocked his Audi completely. A young man in a brown uniform was working a dolly near the service entrance, stacking flat boxes with focused efficiency. "Hey," Darius kept his voice even. "Any chance you can move it up?" "That's my car." The young man glanced over his shoulder. "Sorry, sir. Elevator's jammed and we've got 2 more loads. 20 minutes, maybe?" Darius looked at the truck, looked at the Audi, looked at his watch. He had time. "Take your time," he said. He meant that, too. The back seat of the Audi was quiet, the way a well-built room is quiet. Darius had always appreciated that about the car. No rattles, no creaks, just the small, sealed sound of a space that held together the way it was supposed to. He reclined the seat back until he was looking up at the ceiling, loosened his tie, and let his shoulders drop for the first time all week. His phone was on silent. He had not sent another message to Angela. There was no reason to. He had told her 7:30, she had confirmed 7:30, and he was 2 blocks from the restaurant with time to spare. He would be out of here and at the florist before the driver finished his second load. He closed his eyes. The garage was nearly empty at this hour. A car pulled in on a far level. He heard its echo, but not its engine. The sound bouncing off concrete in that hollow way sound does in large, empty structures. A door opened and closed somewhere above him. Then quiet again. The tinted windows made the light inside the car soft and gray, the kind of dim that presses gently on your eyelids. Darius felt the tension in his jaw slowly release. He breathed through his nose. His hands rested flat on his thighs, still and open. He thought about the flowers, yellow ranunculus mixed with white garden roses, the same arrangement every year because she had said once, early on, she loved them, and he had never seen a reason to change something that was true. He thought about the reservation, corner table, good light. His breathing slowed. The concrete, the hum of the ventilation system, the far-off sound of the city, all of it blurred at the edges, softened, began to recede. Darius Washington was not quite asleep. He was close. He was still. He was quiet in the particular way that a man with a disciplined mind goes quiet. Not empty, just resting. The way a structure settles at the end of a long day without losing any of its strength. The tinted windows held the gray light. His phone, face down on the seat beside him, did not make a sound. And then the driver's side door opened. The door swung open with the soft, precise click of a well-engineered latch. The kind of sound Darius knew from the inside of this car every single day. He did not move. Angela settled into the driver's seat with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. She did not glance in the rearview mirror. She did not look over her shoulder. She pulled the door shut behind her and set her purse on the center console. And the familiar scent of her perfume, warm cedar and something floral he had bought her 2 Christmases ago, drifted back through the car like a quiet lie. Darius lay completely still. His hands were flat against his thighs. His breathing was slow and even, the way he breathed through difficult sight assessments, controlled, quiet, giving nothing away. The reclined seat kept him below her sight line. The dark tint swallowed the gray light. He was invisible. She had no idea. Seconds passed. Then the passenger door opened. The man who got in was big through the shoulders, wore a dark jacket that smelled faintly of something expensive, and settled into the seat with the comfortable confidence of a person who had been in it before. Not for the first time. Not even recently for the first time. Broderick Harmon. Darius recognized his voice before he said 3 words. "You look good." Broderick's voice was low and warm, the kind of warm that meant something specific. "You always look good when you dress up for it." Angela laughed. That was the thing that landed first. The laugh, not the words. The laugh was light and unguarded and completely at ease, and Darius had not heard that sound from her in years. He could not have said exactly when it disappeared from their marriage, but he knew now, with absolute certainty, where it had gone. "Stop it," she said, but she was still smiling when she said it. He could hear the smile. He knew every sound she made. "I'm serious. That dress—" Broad. Her voice shifted. Not cold, but precise. The voice she used when she wanted to move past pleasantries and get to the point. Darius knew that one too. "You can't text me like that. Not today. Not on a day when he's paying attention." A pause. "He never pays attention." "You don't know that." A beat. "You don't know him." Broderick was quiet for a moment. Then the console creaked. A small sound, the sound of someone leaning across it, and Angela's breath changed. Not fear, Not discomfort. The opposite. They kissed. Darius knew it from the silence of it, the specific absence of sound that happens between two people who are used to being close. It was not brief. It was not hesitant. It lasted long enough for him to feel every second of it in his chest, like a nail being driven slowly into wood. His hands stayed flat on his thighs. He did not close his eyes. He stared at the ceiling of the car he had owned for 4 years, and breathed through his nose, and felt the edges of something enormous pressing against the inside of his ribs. He did not let it move. He was not ready to feel it yet. Feeling it would make him move. Moving would end this, and he needed to hear the rest. 2 years, Broderick said softly, when it was over. Almost 2.5. That's a long time to keep something like this in a box. I know. Angela's voice had shifted again, softer now, more private. Something Darius had not been offered in a very long time. I know it is. So, how much longer? Broderick asked. Seriously, Ang, how much longer do we have to do this? The car was quiet for a moment. Just be patient, Angela said. Calm, certain. I have a plan. Broderick exhaled. Not satisfied, but willing. You always have a plan. Yes, she said simply. I do. She dropped him half a block from the garage exit. He got out without ceremony, a brief touch of her hand, a low word Darius could not fully catch. And then the door closed, and Angela pulled forward without pause. She merged into traffic, heading toward Maison Ilara. She never checked the back seat. Not once. Darius listened to the sound of the city for a long moment after she was gone. Then he sat up slowly. He straightened in the seat and looked at himself in the rearview mirror. Not the way a man looks at himself when he is falling apart. The way a man looks at himself when he is deciding something. His face was even. His eyes were steady. His tie was still loosened at the collar, and he reached up and tightened it with 2 careful movements, pressing the knot back into place. He picked up his phone. He opened the voice memo app, pressed record. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and completely level. The voice of a man reading measurements off a damaged wall. Friday, April 11th. Parking garage, Building 2. Approximately 5:10 p.m. He paused. Angela got into the driver's seat. She didn't see me. Broderick Harmon got into the passenger seat. They kissed. The conversation confirmed they have been together over 2 years. Broderick said 2.5. Another pause. Angela told him she has a plan. Her exact words were, "Just be patient. I have a plan." He pressed stop. He backed it up to a private cloud account Angela had never seen and did not know existed. Then he started the car and drove toward the restaurant. Maison Ilara was the kind of restaurant that understood occasion. Soft amber lighting. White tablecloths pressed flat and smooth. Candles that burned low and steady, never flickering. The kind of place where the staff moved without being heard, and conversations stayed where they were put. Darius arrived at 7:28. He had stopped at the restroom in the lobby and checked his reflection once. Tie centered, jacket straight, face composed. He looked like a man arriving for an anniversary dinner, which was exactly what he needed to look like. Angela was already at the table. She saw him the moment he came through the dining room entrance, and her face did what it always did. Opened up, brightened, the warm and genuine-looking smile of a woman happy to see her husband. She lifted her hand in a small wave. She looked beautiful. The dress, the candle catching the gold of her earrings, the way she turned toward him as he approached, like he was the thing she had been waiting for. He pulled out his chair and sat down. "You look tired," she said, leaning forward slightly. "Long week?" "Long day," he said. "I'm fine." She reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Her fingers were warm. "I already told them the wine. Is that okay?" "That's perfect," he said. It was the wine he always ordered. She knew that. She knew everything about him that was easy to know. all the small preferences that cost nothing to remember and made a person feel seen. He understood now how that worked. How you could learn someone's habits the way you learned the layout of a building. Not because you loved it, but because you needed to move through it without trouble. He let her hand stay on his. The wine came. She poured. She touched her glass to his and said, 12 years, with a softness in her voice that would have moved him 6 hours ago. 12 years, he said. He drank. Across the table, Angela unfolded her napkin and settled in, and the performance began in earnest. He watched it now the way he watched a structure he suspected was compromised, not looking at the surface, looking at what the surface was doing, what it was working to conceal. She proposed a vacation. Somewhere warm, she said. A beach? Maybe that place in Mexico they had always talked about? She said we and us the way people do when they are drawing a picture of a future. They want someone else to believe in. He nodded. Asked which month she was thinking. She said, maybe September. Lovely, he said. He filed it away. She asked about a project he was finishing downtown. He gave her enough to make the conversation feel real. A detail about the curtain wall system, a small problem with the structural engineer that had since resolved. She listened attentively. She laughed at the right moment. She asked a follow-up question that proved she had been listening. She was good. He had always known she was good at people. He understood now what that skill had been doing for 2.5 years while he wasn't looking. He watched her talk and thought about the evenings she had called from the hospital to say a board meeting was running long. The Saturday last November when she had taken her car in for service and returned 4 hours later from a dealership 20 minutes away. The way their joint savings account had slowly, gradually, shifted toward accounts in her name only, framed each time as a matter of convenience, of simplifying the tax paperwork, of something practical and reasonable that he had accepted without question because he had no architecture for suspicion. He had not built for it. It was not in his design. He thought about those things quietly, behind steady eyes and a mouth that asked easy questions, and he understood for the first time that he had not been careless. He had simply trusted her completely. Those were not the same thing, but the result was the same. The check came. Angela waved off his card with a familiar gesture. I've got it. You always get it. And paid. Another gesture filed away. They walked out into the cool of the parking lot, and she tucked her hand into the crook of his arm the way she had on the night they first arrived at a place like this together. He matched her pace. He said nothing that mattered, and everything that sounded right. At her car, she kissed him on the cheek. Warm, familiar, her hand briefly on his chest. I have a headache coming on, she said. I'm going straight home to bed. Don't stay too late. Client call I forgot to flag, he said. I'll be an hour, maybe 2. Go rest. She squeezed his arm. Happy anniversary, baby. Happy anniversary, he said. He watched her pull out of the lot and turn north. He stood beside his car and counted inside his head. 1 minute, 2, 3. Then he got in and followed. She did not drive home. She drove 20 minutes east, through streets that grew quieter and less familiar, to a mid-range hotel set back from a commercial corridor, plain-faced, deliberately unremarkable, the kind of building chosen specifically not to be remembered. She pulled into the lot and parked near the side entrance. Broderick's car was already there. Darius parked on the far side of the street, against the curb, engine off. He kept his headlights dark. From where he sat, he had a clear line to the hotel entrance, the glass doors, the low awning, the name of the place lit in plain block letters above it. Nothing elegant, nothing designed to be noticed. That was the whole point. He waited. The parking lot was quiet. A man walked out with a rolling suitcase and loaded it into a sedan without looking up. A woman in scrubs crossed from the side entrance to her car, phone to her ear, gone in 30 seconds. the ordinary traffic of an ordinary place, doing ordinary things on a Friday night. Darius sat with his hands in his lap and watched the entrance. He did not feel what he expected to feel. He had thought in the car on the way here that there would be something hot and immediate, some wave of it that he would have to hold down. But what he actually felt was closer to the feeling he got when he was reviewing a structural assessment and found exactly the failure he had suspected. Not surprise, not even grief yet, just the cold and clarifying weight of confirmation. 20 minutes passed. Then the glass door opened, and Broderick Harmon walked out. He was still in his jacket. He moved with the easy, unhurried confidence of a man completely comfortable where he was, hands loose at his sides, no urgency in his step. He crossed the small distance to his car, opened the passenger door, and leaned in to retrieve something from the seat. The glass door opened again. Angela appeared in the doorway. She was still wearing the dress. The deep burgundy fabric, the cut he had noticed when he sat across from her at dinner 2 hours ago. Her heels were off. She was holding them in one hand, barefoot on the threshold, and her earrings were still in. She leaned against the door frame and called after him. Darius could not hear the words through the glass and the distance. He did not need to. Broderick looked back over his shoulder. He said something. She laughed. That laugh, the one Darius had heard in the parking garage, the one that had not been in their house in longer than he could honestly say. Then he pushed the car door shut and walked back toward her. She stepped out to meet him at the entrance. He put his arm around her shoulder. Easy, practiced, natural. The gesture of a man who had done this 1,000 times in private and was not thinking about it anymore. She leaned into him without hesitation, her head tilted toward his shoulder. His hand settled at her waist. Darius raised his phone. He did not rush. He steadied his elbow against the door panel and framed the shot with the same slow attention he gave to anything that needed to be right the first time. Both faces in the frame, the awning above them, the hotel name clear and fully legible in the block letters of the sign. Angela's dress, the color, the cut, unmistakable. Broderick's profile, then 3/4, then almost full face as he turned to say something to her. Darius took 4 photographs in quiet succession. He looked at them once, briefly, in the low light of his car, long enough to confirm what they showed. Then he opened the private cloud account on his phone. It was an account he had set up years ago for project documentation, separate from everything shared, something Angela had never had reason to ask about and had never been given access to. He uploaded all 4 photographs. He uploaded the voice memo he had recorded in the parking garage, date, names, Broderick's exact question, Angela's exact answer. He waited until the upload completed, and the confirmation appeared on the screen. Then he put the phone face down on the passenger seat and drove. The hotel he found on the opposite side of the city was clean and anonymous and cost him $119 for the night. He paid cash at the front desk and carried nothing upstairs but his jacket and his phone. The room was what hotel rooms are: a bed, a window, the low hum of a climate system doing its job. He sat on the edge of the mattress and did not turn on the television. He made 3 decisions, quietly, without writing them down. The first, he would not confront Angela. Not yet. Not until he understood the full shape of what she had called a plan. The affair was confirmed. The photographs were secured. But a plan was architecture. It had dimensions he could not yet see, load-bearing elements he had not yet identified. Moving before he understood the structure would only give her time to shore up the parts he hadn't found. The second, he would call Carol Okafor first thing Monday morning. Carol would know how to handle everything he had built so far, how to preserve it, how to use it, and how to build the rest of what he would need. The third, he would go home in the morning. He would be there before Angela woke. He would make coffee and read the paper and be exactly the man she expected him to be. Steady, unaware, predictable in all the ways she had come to depend on. He was home before 6. The house was quiet. Angela's car was in the driveway. He unlocked the front door without sound and moved through the kitchen the way he had moved through it for 12 years, knowing every creak, every step that held, and every one that didn't. He started the coffee. He found the paper on the front step and brought it in. He sat at the kitchen table in the pale early light and turned the pages without reading them. When Angela came downstairs at 7:30, he looked up and smiled. She poured herself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter and asked how the client call had gone. "Fine," he said. "Wrapped up faster than I thought." She nodded, still half asleep, and carried her cup back toward the bedroom. Darius turned the page. He left the house at 8:15. Angela was in the shower. He heard the pipes in the wall doing what they always did. That low groan on the second floor that he had meant to fix for years and never gotten around to. He picked up his keys from the hook by the door, stepped out into the pale Saturday morning, and drove. His mother's neighborhood looked the same way it always did. Small yards, chain-link fences, a corner store with a hand-painted sign that had not changed in 30 years. The streets were quiet this early. A man was washing his car 2 houses down from Paulette's. A little girl was sitting on a porch step in a puffy coat, eating something out of a paper bag. Darius pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment with the engine off. Then he went inside. Paulette had the table set already. Eggs, toast, a small pot of grits, orange juice in a glass pitcher she had owned since he was 9 years old. She was standing at the stove when he came through the back door, and she turned and looked at him the way she always looked at him when she knew something was wrong. Not with alarm, but with the particular steadiness of a woman who had decided long ago that panic was a luxury she could not afford. "Sit down," she said. He sat. She brought the eggs to the table and sat across from him and folded her hands and waited. So he told her. All of it. He started with the parking garage, the delivery truck, the reclined seat, the silence. He described Angela sliding into the driver's seat without looking back. He said Broderick's name clearly, without hesitation, and watched his mother's face register it and go still. He told her about the conversation he had heard word for word, the 2 years, the plan Angela mentioned. He told her about sitting up slowly afterward and recording the voice memo in the quiet of his own car. He told her about the anniversary dinner, the wine she ordered, the vacation she proposed, the way she touched his hand across the table. He told her about following Angela across the city, about the hotel, about standing outside in the dark, watching Broderick put his arm around her shoulders while she leaned into him in the dress she had worn to their table. He told her about the photographs. Paulette listened to all of it without making a sound. She did not reach across the table. She did not shake her head or press her lips together or do any of the things people do when they are trying to show you they are listening. She simply listened, fully and without interruption, the way she had always done when something serious was being said at her table. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. She looked at her hands. Then she said, "I never trusted that man." Darius looked at her. "Broderick." She said the name like it left a bad taste. "Your 5th anniversary party. 7 years ago." She paused. "I watched him look at Angela that night. The way he did it. It wasn't the way a man looks at his friend's wife. It was familiar. Too familiar for what it was supposed to be." She was quiet again for a moment. "I told myself I was wrong. I told myself you were happy, and I had no proof, and it wasn't my place." She looked up at him. "I've thought about that night more times than you'd believe." Darius did not say anything immediately. He sat with it. 7 years ago, their 5th anniversary. He had been 34 years old, standing in this same neighborhood, in the backyard of this same house, genuinely happy, genuinely certain. The affair Angela had admitted to in the car was 2 years old. But Paulette's eyes at that 5th anniversary party were 7 years of memory. And his mother was not a woman who imagined things. He picked up his fork, set it back down. "You couldn't have known," he said. "No," Paulette said, "but I could have said something." Neither of them spoke for a moment. Outside, a car moved slowly down the street. The refrigerator hummed. Then Paulette leaned forward slightly, both forearms flat on the table, and looked at her son the way she had always looked at him when she needed him to hear something exactly as she meant it. "You know how to build things that last," she said. "Don't blow this up. Build something that won't fall on you." He held her gaze. He nodded once. He ate some of the breakfast, more than he expected to. They talked about small things after that. The neighbor's new fence, a television program she had been watching, a crack in her front walkway that he promised to look at before winter. Normal things, solid things. Before he left, he stood at the door and turned back to her. "I'm going to need you again before this is finished," he said. Paulette looked at him steadily. "I know," she said. "I'll be here." He drove back across the city with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. Monday morning he arrived at the office early, closed his door, and dialed Carol Okafor's number from memory. When she answered, he kept it brief. "I need to meet with you," he said. "Private. No assistance. Nothing on the calendar." A short pause. Then Carol said, "When?" "Today," Darius said. "If you can." Carol Okafor's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, 3 blocks from the courthouse. The waiting room had 2 chairs, a small table with no magazines on it, and a receptionist who looked up when Darius came in and immediately picked up her phone. 30 seconds later, Carol appeared in the doorway herself. "Come on back," she said. Her private office was neat in the way of someone who understood that clutter was a form of weakness. 1 large desk, 2 chairs across from it, a credenza along the wall with files standing upright in labeled rows, a single window that looked out over the city. She closed the door behind them and sat down and looked at him with the focused attention of someone who had already cleared everything else off her mind. "Talk to me," she said. So he did. He laid it out the same way he had laid it out for Paulette. In order, without editorializing, the same way he had recorded the voice memo in the parking garage. He played her the recording first. She listened with her elbows on the desk and her fingers laced together, her eyes fixed on a point slightly above the phone, as though she were watching the scene play out in the air in front of her. When it finished, she said nothing for a moment. Then she held out her hand. He gave her his phone with the photographs already pulled up. Carol looked at each one carefully and slowly. She took her time with them. She pinched the screen to enlarge the hotel sign in the first frame, then the timestamp in the corner, then Broderick's face in the 3rd photograph, full and clear and entirely unambiguous. She studied Angela's dress. She went back to the hotel sign again. She set the phone down on the desk between them. "These are usable," she said. "Timestamps are clean. The hotel signage is legible in all 4 frames. Her dress is identifiable. You can place her at dinner before this was taken. His face is clear in 2 of them." She paused. "You did the right thing backing everything up immediately. From this point forward, I need you to do the following." She told him exactly. The cloud account needed to be a dedicated folder with no other content, nothing that could create questions about context or selective preservation. The original files on his phone were to remain untouched and unedited. No screenshots, no forwarding, no printing on his own. Any physical copies needed to come through her office on her equipment, so the chain of custody stayed clean. He listened and did not interrupt, and when she finished, he nodded once. Then Carol leaned back in her chair slightly and looked at him. "Has Angela ever had access to any of the firm's financial instruments?" she said. Darius paused. It was not a long pause, but it was real. He had not anticipated the question, which was not something that happened to him often. She has no formal role, he said, but she knows the firm's general structure. She knew our early investors, some of the early accounts, before we formalized the partnership. She had visibility into. Carol was already writing something on her notepad. I need to make a call, she said. You can wait outside or stay. Your choice. I'll stay, Darius said. The call lasted 9 minutes. Carol spoke quietly and used the kind of shorthand that meant she was talking to someone she had worked with for a long time. A contact at a title company, from what Darius could piece together. She asked 3 questions, listened for most of the 9 minutes, and wrote steadily the entire time. When she hung up, she looked at what she had written, read it back silently, and then set the pen down. She told him what she had found. Broderick Harmon had purchased 3 commercial properties in the last 14 months. The acquisition prices placed them well beyond what his publicly visible financial position should have supported. The financing structure on 2 of the 3 properties ran through a holding LLC, a company that, on its surface, looked like a standard investment vehicle. But the seed capital for that LLC traced to a personal account in Angela's name, and that account had received a series of deposits over the previous 18 months. Funds moved from the couple's joint savings in amounts that were never large enough, individually, to trigger an automatic alert. Each transfer was just under the threshold. Every single one. Carol let that sit for a moment before she continued. This is not impulsive, she said. Whoever structured these withdrawals understood how the alert systems work. They sized them deliberately. 18 months. That is a long operation, Darius. He did not respond right away. He was looking at a fixed point on the edge of her desk. A small brass paperweight, octagonal, catching the light from the window. He let the full shape of it settle in his mind. Angela, at her hospital administrator's desk, applying the same disciplined precision she used on departmental budgets to the project of systematically emptying his savings into the foundation of another man's real estate portfolio. Not a mistake. Not an impulse. A plan. What do I do? He said. It was not quite a question. Nothing that she can see, Carol said. I need 4 weeks. I need the financial records from your joint accounts. All of them, as far back as 2 years. Photograph them. Don't remove them. I need you to start keeping a personal log. Dates, times, anything she says or does that relates to your finances, the house, the firm. Write it the same day it happened. She paused. And I need you to go home tonight and be exactly the man she thinks you are. Darius picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. That, he said quietly, I can do. He was home by 6:30. Angela was in the kitchen, still in her work clothes, heating something on the stove. She looked up when he came in and smiled, easy, unguarded, the smile of a woman with no reason to be anything other than relaxed. You're early, she said. Wrapped up faster than I thought, he said. He set his keys on the hook by the door. He walked to the kitchen and looked over her shoulder at the pan. Smells good. Nothing special, she said. Just pasta. Works for me, he said. He poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter and asked her about her day. She told him. He listened. He asked a follow-up question. She laughed at something he said. He laughed back. He was steady. He was warm. His face gave her nothing at all. The next morning, Darius arrived at the firm before Vincent. He made coffee in the small kitchen at the back of the office, poured 2 cups, and set one on Vincent's desk. Then he sat down in his own chair and opened a set of drawings he had no intention of looking at, and waited. Vincent came in at 8:15, same as always. He hung up his coat, picked up the coffee, took a sip, and looked across the open floor at Darius's closed expression. Close the door, Darius said. Vincent closed it. He sat down across from Darius and did not ask any questions. He just waited. That was the thing about Vincent. He understood when something required patience before it required a response. Darius told him about the LLC. He told him about the 3 properties, the seed capital, the 18 months of carefully sized withdrawals. He told him what Carol had found and what Carol had said. He did not tell him about the anniversary dinner or the hotel or the photographs. That was personal, and he was not ready to give it away to anyone who did not absolutely need it. What Vincent needed was the part that touched the firm, and that part was enough. Vincent listened without interrupting. He held his coffee cup with both hands and kept his eyes on Darius the entire time. When Darius finished, Vincent set the cup down on the desk. He was quiet for a moment. It was a particular kind of quiet. Not the quiet of a man who had nothing to say, but the quiet of a man who was watching something click into place that he had not known was a missing piece until right now. 3 months ago, Vincent said slowly. Networking event. The one downtown. The urban development dinner in October. Darius looked at him. Broderick was there, Vincent said. We talked for maybe 10 minutes. It was nothing. Small talk, industry stuff. And then at the end, almost like he was just making conversation, he asked me if you had ever thought about bringing in outside investors or selling a minority stake. He paused. He made it sound casual, like he was just curious. The room was very still. I thought it was odd, Vincent continued. Coming from him. He's not exactly in our lane. But I laughed it off, and I forgot about it. He looked at Darius directly. I should have told you. You didn't know, Darius said. I know that, Vincent said. But I'm telling you now. Neither of them said anything for a moment. They did not need to. The shape of the thing had become completely clear, and they were both looking at it with the same set of eyes. 2 men who had spent years building something real, now understanding exactly how it had been sized up from the outside. Broderick had not been conducting an affair with a plan to eventually leave. He had been conducting a plan that the affair was a part of. Angela inside the marriage, feeding information. Broderick outside it, positioning himself for access. The refinancing conversation Angela had started with Darius, framed as smart financial management, would have moved equity into play. The firm, once Broderick had a foothold, would have been the next structure they walked into. I need you to write it down, Darius said. Everything you remember about that conversation. Date, location, exactly what he said. I need you to give it to Carol. I'll have it to her today, Vincent said. He did. By noon, he had delivered a 2-page written statement to Carol's office. The date, the venue, Broderick's exact phrasing as best he could reconstruct it. The way the question had been positioned as casual curiosity rather than direct inquiry. Carol added it to the growing file without comment, though Darius could hear in her voice when she called to confirm receipt that it had landed exactly where she expected it to. That afternoon, Carol and Vincent began the work of legally fortifying the firm's partnership structure, closing the theoretical openings that Broderick's question suggested he had been quietly probing. New documentation, reinforced agreements, everything reviewed and signed and placed beyond reach before Angela's attorneys ever had a reason to look in that direction. Darius let them work. He went home. The 4 weeks that followed were the longest of his life. Angela brought up the refinancing idea twice more. Once over dinner, once on a Sunday morning while they were both still in the kitchen, framed each time as obvious financial common sense. Darius listened carefully each time and expressed no resistance and no urgency. He mentioned paperwork. He mentioned the firm's accountant needing to weigh in. He was pleasant and vague and gave her nothing to push against. Each time he noted the conversation in the log, he kept on a password-protected note on his phone, writing it up the same evening with the date and the exact words he could remember. Broderick called on a Wednesday afternoon. Warm, unhurried, the voice of a man stopping in to check on an old acquaintance. Darius answered, and was equally warm, and gave him nothing. He asked about a project Broderick had mentioned months ago. He laughed at the right moments. When the call ended, he sat for a moment with his phone in his hand and noticed, beneath the easy surface of Broderick's voice, the faint and particular tension of a man who was waiting to find out if something had already gone wrong. It had. Broderick just didn't know it yet. Carol called on a Thursday evening, 6 weeks after their first meeting. "The documentation is complete," she said. "Forensic accounting signed off this afternoon. Everything is airtight. The transfers, the LLC, the property chain. The photographs are formally logged and authenticated. I have Vincent's statement. I have your log." A brief pause. "We are ready to move whenever you are." Darius stood at the window of his home office and looked out at the street below. "When do you want to move?" Carol asked. 2 weeks, Darius said. He called Paulette the next morning. "I need to use your house," he said. "A birthday lunch, 2 Saturdays from now." Paulette was quiet for a moment. "All right. I'll bring the food. You just need to be there." "Darius," her voice was steady, "I'm always here." He called Gwen Hargrove that same afternoon. He had her number from years of holiday gatherings and the kind of loose, easy familiarity that builds between a husband and his wife's family when everyone is pretending the marriage is exactly what it looks like. He had always liked Gwen. She was the quieter of the two sisters, the more honest one, he now understood. She picked up on the third ring. "Gwen," he said. "It's Darius." "Hey." A small pause. Careful. She could hear something in his voice that he had not tried to hide. "Everything okay?" "I need you to come to something," he said. "A lunch at my mother's house, 2 Saturdays from now. I need you to be there in person." Another pause. Longer this time. "Should I be worried?" she asked. "I need you to come," he said again. "Something important is going to come to the surface that day. You should hear it directly. That's all I can tell you." Gwen did not push. She did not ask for more than he was offering, which told him everything he had suspected about her. That somewhere underneath all those years of family dinners and birthday calls and polite silences, she had already been carrying questions she had never found a reason to ask out loud. "I'll be there," she said. Angela arrived at Paulette's house at 12:30 with a white bakery box and a good mood. She wore the way she wore everything in public. Naturally, convincingly, as if it had grown there on its own. The cake inside the box was lemon with cream cheese frosting, Paulette's favorite. Angela had remembered, and she made sure it was noticed. "Happy birthday, Paulette." She set the box on the kitchen counter and kissed Paulette on the cheek. Paulette thanked her. She did not smile wide, but Angela did not notice. She never had. Gwen was already at the table when Angela came in from the kitchen, and her face did something small and quick when she saw her sister, a readjustment, barely visible, like a woman setting down something heavy before she stood up to greet someone. "Didn't know you'd be here," Angela said, hugging her. "Darius invited me," Gwen said. Her voice was warm enough, level. Angela looked briefly at Darius across the table. He smiled and pulled out her chair. The meal was quiet and ordinary on its surface. Paulette had made her pot roast. The bread was warm. The conversation moved through easy things. A news story, a neighbor's new car, whether the weather would hold through November. Angela ate well and talked easily, and once reached over to refill Paulette's water glass without being asked. She believed the refinancing was 3 weeks from moving forward. She believed the room contained nothing she had not already accounted for. Midway through the meal, Darius set down his fork. He did it without emphasis, no shift in his posture, no clearing of his throat. He simply set the fork down on the edge of his plate and let the small sound of it touching porcelain be the only signal. Everyone at the table felt it anyway. "I need to talk," he said. "I know this isn't the moment anyone would choose, but the people in this room are the people this concerns." Angela's expression moved. Not much. She was too practiced for that. But it moved. Darius started with the parking garage. He described the delivery truck, the 20-minute wait, the reclined seat, and the dark tint. He said Broderick's name the way he said everything, clearly, without hesitation, as though the name were simply a fact in a report. He described the kiss. He described lying completely still. He described the anniversary dinner, the wine she ordered, the vacation she proposed, the hand she placed over his on the white tablecloth, the headache she mentioned in the parking lot, and the kiss on his cheek, and the way she pulled out of the lot heading in the wrong direction for home. He described the hotel, the parking lot across the street, the 20-minute wait, Broderick coming out the front entrance, Angela appearing in the doorway, still wearing the dress she had worn to their table 2 hours earlier, calling after him, the way she crossed to him, the way she leaned in. Then he reached down and opened the folder on the chair beside him. He set it in the center of Paulette's table. Inside were 4 photographs, full color, each one time-stamped in the bottom right corner, the hotel's name printed on the sign above the entrance in letters large enough to read without leaning forward. In 2 of the frames, Broderick's face was clearly visible. In all 4, Angela's anniversary dress was unmistakable. Behind the photographs, Carol's financial documentation, 2 pages, clean and precise, laid out 18 months of transfers in plain language, the withdrawal amounts, the LLC, the property purchases, the dates. Darius slid a copy across the table to Gwen. He placed one beside Paulette's plate. Paulette did not look at it. She kept her eyes on her son. Angela stared at the photographs. "This is—" She stopped. Started again. "These are being taken out of context. I can explain the finances. They're complicated. There were reasons." "How long, Angela?" Gwen said. Her voice was not loud. It was not angry. It was the voice of a woman who had been holding a question for a very long time, and had finally, quietly, run out of reasons not to ask it. Angela looked at her sister. The silence that followed was not brief. It stretched across the table and filled the room and pressed against every wall in Paulette's small dining room. Angela opened her mouth once, then closed it. She could not answer cleanly, and every person at the table understood, in the same moment, exactly what that meant. Darius looked at his wife one final time. His voice was even, unhurried, each word placed with care. "You used 12 years of my trust and my money to build a life with another man," he said. "You sat across from me at our anniversary table, and you ordered the wine I liked, and you talked about vacation, and you did it anyway." He paused. "I have nothing left to say to you that isn't already in that folder." He turned to Paulette. "Thank you for the meal," he said. The pot roast was perfect. He stood, picked up his copy of the folder, and walked to the front door. He opened it without hurry. He stepped through. He pulled it closed behind him with the same quiet precision he applied to everything. No force, no drama, just the soft and final sound of a latch catching. He did not look back. Carol submitted the petition at 2:47 in the afternoon. Darius was still driving when his phone buzzed on the passenger seat. He did not pick it up. He already knew what the message would say. He and Carol had agreed on the timing days earlier. The moment he walked out of Paulette's house, she would file. Not an hour later. Not after anyone had a chance to make a phone call or send a text or begin building a different version of the story. The petition cited adultery. It cited financial fraud within the marriage. Every document Carol had assembled over the past 4 weeks was attached. The transfer records, the LLC registration, the property purchase dates, the forensic accounting summary that laid the 18-month timeline out in language clear enough for anyone to follow. And at the front of the evidentiary file, logged and authenticated, were 4 photographs, time-stamped. The hotel sign fully visible in every frame. Both subjects clearly identified. Carol had told him, in her careful and precise way, why the photographs mattered beyond the obvious. They were not simply proof of the affair. They established that the relationship between Angela and Broderick was sustained, ongoing, and active during the entire period the financial transfers were being made. That connection, personal betrayal running alongside financial fraud for the same 18 months, made it nearly impossible for Angela to argue the two things were separate. She could not claim the money moved for innocent reasons. She could not claim Broderick was a legitimate investment partner. The photographs and the financial records told the same story, and they told it together. Broderick learned about the civil filing from his attorney at 4:15 that afternoon. He was sitting in his car in the parking structure of a building he had recently toured as a potential acquisition when the call came through. His attorney's voice was measured in the way attorneys are measured when the news they are delivering is both serious and not entirely surprising to them. The filing named him directly. The photographs were part of the record. The LLC was named. The capital sourcing was documented. Broderick sat in his car for a long time after the call ended. The parking structure was dim and quiet around him. He stared at the concrete wall in front of his bumper and did not move. The civil proceeding moved with the particular momentum of a case that has nothing to argue against. Angela's attorneys read the petition, reviewed the attached documentation, and understood within a business day that there was no credible position from which to mount a defense. The photographs established the relationship's duration. The financial records established the mechanism of the fraud. Together they formed a structure with no weak points, the kind of structure, Carol noted privately to herself, that a very careful architect might design. Angela was required to return the full principal of every transferred amount, with interest calculated from the date of each withdrawal. 18 months of careful, methodical construction, sized to avoid alerts, moved quietly, accumulated with precision, unwound in a single legal order. The financial position she had spent a year and a half building dissolved completely. Every dollar she had redirected came back. The marital home went to Darius. It had been funded overwhelmingly by his income from the beginning, and the documentation made that history impossible to dispute. Angela kept her salary. She kept her career. But she kept nothing she had moved, nothing she had built with what she had taken, and nothing she had been counting on when she pictured the life she was stepping into. The LLC exposure pulled at Broderick's portfolio like a loose thread on a knit. 2 of his 3 recent properties became legally entangled in the civil proceeding, their financing structures under scrutiny, their capital sources suddenly visible in ways they had never been designed to be. The investors who had provided additional funding on top of Angela's seed money had done so in good faith, with no knowledge of where the foundation capital had come from. When they found out, they began to withdraw. Quietly at first, then with more urgency. Broderick's calls went unreturned. His emails sat unanswered. Vincent said nothing false about Broderick Harmon to anyone. He did not need to. He simply shared verified facts. The written statement he had given Carol, the documented nature of Broderick's inquiry about the firm's ownership structure, with the professional colleagues who needed to know it. Real estate development is a relationship industry. It runs on trust and reputation and the accumulated confidence of people who have watched you operate over time. Once the right people in those circles learned how Broderick operated, the information traveled the way such information always travels, not loudly, not on any public platform, but steadily, through the conversations that happen in boardrooms and over coffee and at the margins of industry events. No one said anything libelous. No one needed to. The facts were sufficient. Broderick faced no criminal charges. But he was professionally isolated in ways that did not announce themselves all at once, and did not reverse. Doors that had been open closed quietly. Introductions that would have happened did not. The foothold he had been working toward, the one that required Angela's access and Darius's unawareness, never materialized. The firm was fully insulated before Angela's attorneys finished reading the petition. Carol and Vincent had moved fast, and moved first. The partnership agreement was refreshed and filed. Every theoretical avenue Broderick's inquiry had been probing toward was legally closed before anyone on the other side thought to look for it. Angela was left with a folder on her mother-in-law's dining room table, 2 pages of financial documentation she could not dispute, and 4 photographs she could not explain away. Gwen had not moved from her chair. Paulette had not left her seat at the head of the table. Neither of them had anything left to say that the silence in the room was not already saying on its own. There was no one left for Angela to call who did not already know exactly what the photographs showed. 14 months later, Darius Washington stood on a plot of earth that had been empty for 11 years. The ground beneath his dress shoes was soft from 2 days of rain. Around him, folding chairs held neighbors and city officials and community organizers who had been waiting for this moment longer than Darius had been involved in it. A podium stood at the edge of the cleared lot. Behind it, a banner in deep green and gold read, "East Side Community Arts Center, Breaking Ground." Vincent stood to his left, close enough that their shoulders were almost touching. Neither of them said much. They did not need to. They had been building toward this contract for 2 years, and now that the morning had arrived, the feeling between them was too large for casual conversation. It sat quietly in the space where words would have been. A city councilwoman spoke first. Then the project director for the neighborhood association, a woman named Dorothea, who had grown up 3 blocks from the lot, and whose voice broke slightly when she described what the center would mean for families who had been told, in one way or another, their whole lives, that they were not the priority. People in the chairs nodded. A few of them reached for the hands of the people sitting beside them. When it was Darius's turn at the podium, he kept it short. He thanked the community. He said the building would belong to them in every sense that mattered. Designed for them, built for them, standing in their neighborhood for as long as the foundation held. He said that last part with particular care, because he meant it the way he meant everything he said at a podium. Precisely, and not a word more than was necessary. The photographer from the city paper caught them with the golden shovels still in their hands. Darius and Vincent, both in dark coats, both looking directly at the camera without performing anything. 2 men who had built something real together and were not close to finished building. The photograph that ran in the paper the following morning looked exactly like that. Nothing more, nothing less, just the truth of the moment, printed clearly. He drove home after the ceremony to the east side of the city, to the converted warehouse loft he had spent 4 months redesigning from raw concrete and exposed ductwork into the first home he had ever built entirely for himself. No negotiated paint colors, no compromises on the kitchen layout, no softening of the industrial bones of the building because someone else found them too stark. Every choice had been his. The wide drafting table positioned under the north-facing skylights, the deep bookshelves along the east wall, the simple and open kitchen that was functional rather than decorative. It looked exactly like him. It felt, every morning when he woke up in it, like a space that had been waiting for him to stop apologizing for what he actually wanted. He changed clothes. He made lunch. He sat at the window for a while and watched the neighborhood move through a Saturday afternoon. Sunday dinners at Paulette's had become the fixed point of his week. He arrived every Sunday at 4. She always had something on the stove before he knocked. They ate slowly and talked about everything except the things that no longer needed to be talked about. She asked about the firm, about the arts center, about the small details of his daily life that she had always asked about, and that he had sometimes been too distracted to answer properly before. He answered all of them now. She listened the way she had always listened, without interruption, with complete attention, like what he was saying was the only thing happening in the room. He had stopped expecting her to bring up Angela. She never did. Neither did he. There was nothing left in that direction that required either of their voices. He had been seeing someone for about 6 months. Her name was Renata. She was an urban planner, thoughtful and direct, with a laugh that arrived without warning and a way of asking questions that suggested she was genuinely curious about the answers. They moved slowly and without pressure, two careful people taking their time with something that felt worth taking time with. She was not the center of where he was or what he was building. She was simply present in it, honestly, without performance, without a plan running underneath the warmth she showed him. He had learned the cost of moving before he understood what he was walking into. He was not going to pay that price again. He was in no hurry. He had things to build. He thought about Angela sometimes, less often now than he had in the early months, and differently. There was no anger left in it. Anger required a kind of ongoing investment he had nothing left to make. What remained was clarity, the clean and precise understanding of a man who had assessed a structural failure and located every crack. He knew where it had started. He knew how it had been concealed. He knew exactly what had held the surface together while the foundation gave way underneath. He had built on that foundation for 12 years. He would not make that mistake twice, not because he was bitter, but because he understood structures now in a way that went beyond anything he had learned in school. On the Friday following the groundbreaking, he was still at his drafting table at 6:30. The office had emptied out around him without him noticing. The building was quiet, the way it always was on late Friday evenings, just the low hum of the HVAC system and the sound of the city, muffled through the thick glass of the windows. His phone lit up on the corner of the table. A message from his assistant, sent before she left for the weekend. Aerial rendering attached. Thought you'd want to see it before Monday. He picked up the phone and opened the image. It filled the screen. A bird's-eye view of the completed community center as the architect's modeling software projected it would look when finished. The roofline was clean and confident. The community courtyard sat open at the center, exactly as he had drawn it, surrounded on three sides by the building's wings. The green space was generous. The entrance faced the neighborhood directly, unobstructed, like a door that had been left open on purpose. It was beautiful. It was exactly what he had designed. It was built to last. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he set the phone down, picked up his pencil, and went back to work. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out two more for you that I think you'll really like.